Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Mass Debate, the show where we debate topics en masse. My name is Brendan Lott. I will be hosting today, and joining me is Louis Monzon.
Hey, guys.
And Robin Lee Chesi.
Howdy.
Right, so this one is a very divisive topic. We're feeding right into the console wars here. Whether you're an Xbox fan or a PlayStation fan, we will have something to say about either one of those. But that's the topic of today's debate, is which is better, PlayStation or Xbox? Each has their benefits, but we're throwing that out of the window, right? And we're going to be arguing for our platform of choice. And I think that we need to start off by first saying that South Africa is PlayStation country.
Cool. Great debate. It's been lovely, guys.
So my first console was a PlayStation 1, the little grey guy. And the original Xbox wasn't actually released in South Africa, as far as I'm aware. But PlayStation was, PlayStation 2, and then eventually only the PlayStation, or the Xbox 360 came to South Africa at the same time that the PlayStation 3 came. But by then, Sony had kind of cemented itself as the console for South Africa. And over the years, Xbox has played second fiddle. And I think that that's true around the world, to be honest. Especially as we've moved into the modern era, where people are looking for reasons to buy a console. Now, modern day and age, consoles are very expensive. Not as expensive as a gaming PC, mind you, but they are still quite costly. So there needs to be something to lure you to go to one side or the other. You can have both if you're a rich person like that, but most people are going to want to just have one console and stick to that one console. So in light of that, Robin, you're going to be arguing for PlayStation, correct?
Yes.
And Louis, you're going to be arguing for Xbox.
I am indeed.
So I think let's start off with sales. So, Robin, how many PlayStations have sold? PlayStation 5 particularly.
Yeah, so PlayStation 5, as of November this year, 46.6 million units have been sold.
That's too many.
And they have the new, I guess, slimmer versions that are on their way. They are launching in some regions this month. And I guess in other regions, probably South Africa as well, towards the end of the year into the new year.
So right now, though, as of time of recording, there's only one version of the PlayStation. There's a digital and a disc version, but they are the same hardware inside.
Yeah, and then the slimmer versions are coming out that'll allow you to expand the storage as well.
Yeah. And Louis, how many Xboxes have been sold?
So as far as these are the latest updated figures as of 30th of June.
This guy can't even pull the figures out.
Give me a second, damn it. Okay, so what did you say the PlayStation numbers were?
46.6.
Okay.
Let's just round it up to 50. Might as well.
So the Xbox Series X and S, the latest Xbox console, has only sold 21 million consoles.
So, I mean, it's quite clear. It's quite clear that people love PlayStation.
It's more than double.
But also, I think that what we need to admit is that PlayStation really does have some fantastic exclusives, and console selling exclusives, right? I know I bought a PlayStation 4 because I wanted to play God of War, the 2018 version. And I'm not going to be ashamed to admit that I spent money on a PlayStation 4. I never bought an Xbox, though, because there wasn't really something to kind of lure me to that side. So let's I'm going to just flip this around. What games do you think kind of lure people towards an Xbox?
So if we talk about the latest console, the latest Xbox, remember that this argument isn't
new.
Isn't Xbox Series X
so much of waffling
versus PlayStation 5. It's Xbox versus PlayStation, right?
Yeah.
So there's a legacy here that we need to talk about.
Legacy.
Right. And Xbox has had some good... I mean, the first ever Elder Scrolls games came to Xbox. The fact that PlayStation doesn't have Morrowind, is sickening. Wow. Oblivion came to PlayStation later on. Okay, but it first came to Xbox. It went to Xbox 360, and Xbox 360 had the Gears of War games. And
I forget about Gears of War. Hey,
everyone does.
I was there. Also very important. Xbox 360 came out before the PlayStation 3. Worldwide. and we're not going to talk about the PlayStation 3 issues. We'll talk about those later. But the Xbox 360 came out after the PlayStation 2, and for South Africa, it was kind of like it was the next generation console that came out first, and it did well in South Africa because the PlayStation 3 wasn't around then, and then people got to see firsthand the next generation of gaming with Gears of War, stuff like that. Too Human also, but we don't talk about Too Human.
Yeah.
And like I said, the Bethesda games came to Xbox first, then PlayStation, things like that. Nowadays, the exclusives aren't as Starfield is the next biggest exclusive that came to Xbox. But I think the problem with Xbox exclusives is that we can't kind of take away the PC question.
Yeah.
Right? And we talked about this in the office earlier.
Yeah.
Microsoft owns Xbox. They also own Windows. And they don't want to alienate their Windows gaming audience by just making a exclusive just
so
for
I'm going to
Xbox.
challenge you there because for many years they did alienate their PC players from Xbox. They were two separate entities, and only when I'm taking a leap here, and people can call me out if they want, but I believe that when Xbox launched Game Pass for PC, that's when the lines started to blur a bit. And now we're at a point where the offering that's on PC Game Pass and console Game Pass is so close it might as well not be different. There are obviously going to be differences. There's going to be some titles that are only available through Xbox Game Pass for the consoles. But I think that this whole, we can't forget the PC market is kind of Microsoft's own doing.
So I guess, but as far as I've always, Gears of War didn't come out on PC.
No.
The original, they were only on Xbox. And I think that was an attempt to kind of get that exclusivity thing. I don't know why kind of Xbox dropped that over time, because I think that does give prestige to a console that it has exclusives. Halo 3 was a big deal on the Xbox 360. Standard setting graphics for the time, and gameplay and stuff. And that only got a PC port later on, if I am remembering right. And this is like 2009, 2010. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think nowadays the reason why Xbox doesn't have these really standard setting exclusives is because they have to deal with, it's not really exclusive. It's also on PC.
Yeah.
And a lot of gamers have a PC and they have a PlayStation, or they have a PC and
an Xbox.
What's the point, right? If you think about it, of having an Xbox and a PC.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Robin, same question to you. What games are worth playing on a PlayStation that would lure somebody to buy a PlayStation, rather?
Happy to answer it. Before I do that, however, my learned colleague here mentioned Legacy.
Okay, we're going Legacy.
Need I mention the sales figures of PlayStation 2, sir? I rest my case in that regard.
So that's a bit unfair because the PlayStation 2 had the largest catalog of games in history.
I apologize for suffering from success. As to your point about exclusives, take your pick, really. In recent years, Bloodborne, for example, Demon's Souls that just came out with the PlayStation 5, God of War, as you mentioned, the game that you purchased the PS4 for, God of War Ragnarok, the Marvel Spider-Man, the Miles Morales as well, Ratchet and Clank, Gran Turismo.
So I'm just going to throw a spanner in the works here and say that, those games are exclusives, but they are timed exclusives, because what we're seeing is more and more often we're getting PlayStation exclusives coming to PC.
Well, we've got to share the love a little bit, and it's not like it's coming out the same day. We're talking 2 years down the line.
It's not even more. Yeah, so sometimes even more. God of War for PC came out in 2021, 2020. Yeah, 2020. So it was 2 years. Yeah.
And also on the PC ports, we've seen more recently, there haven't been great ports.
Yeah, so The Last of Us was an atrocious port from PlayStation.
But that's PlayStation's fault.
How?
No, because PlayStation ports the games to PCs.
Excuse me.
They hire companies that are not doing a good job.
Excuse me, why are you worried about PlayStation 5? Well, I don't know what you want. So as far as exclusive is concerned, I'm quite happy to go band for band with Xbox any day of the week.
Okay, so yes. Unfortunately, this is dropping the pretense, everyone knows. PlayStation has the market cornered on exclusives.
Yeah.
Xbox, it can be argued, Microsoft bought Bethesda because it wanted an exclusive. Because it wants Bethesda's, it wants the Elder Scrolls, and it wants the Fallouts, and it wants the Starfields.
So
right?
I think that's an important point to recognize, is that Xbox, or let's call it Xbox because Microsoft becomes muddying the waters, but Xbox Studios has acquired a whole bunch of developers. And those acquisitions have only just started to wrap up. So if we look at like somebody like Ninja Theory, right? They're working on the next Senua game, which I am hugely excited for.
Looks so good.
But I think that Xbox has been working really hard to acquire studios that would be able to make those exclusives.
Yeah.
And Starfield is the first of those. We can say that it wasn't all that well received. I mean, you can go back to our topic about whether video games are too woke. But I mean, how long is it going to take for Microsoft or Xbox to kind of realize this vision of, hey, we have exclusives that can compete with PlayStation as well?
About 2 years. Right?
Okay.
Until the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out and it destroys.
I think you mean 10 years. Do you not remember the Call of Duty stuff? 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think the point here is that Xbox's exclusives are on their way. The big exclusives, right?
Yeah.
You can play Marvel Spider-Man 2 in the meantime if you want.
I mean, I think Starfield is a good example of what can be done. I do think that there are some elements of Starfield that kind of just landed flat. I think there's a lot of bad blood towards Bethesda over the many years. Also, Redfall didn't do anybody any favors.
Yeah, but we don't talk about Redfall.
No, but we do have to. But I think that this year has also been a really good year for games. And I think that if Starfield had launched in any other year, where it was a little bit quieter, I think that it would have been a Game of the Year contender. I don't know so much about this year, but yeah, I think that to your point, I'll give it to you that Microsoft is working towards creating exclusives, and there is a little glimmer of awesomeness that's happening there.
Mustn't forget that PlayStation acquired Bungie, eh?
Oh yeah,
Acquired
good old Bungie.
Yeah, so
Yeah, Bungie sucks.
we can also acquire some studios, don't worry.
So, I think the next question I need to ask is about subscription services, because subscription services are kind of the lifeblood of many gamers.
No habling,
whether you are paying a monthly game time fee for World of Warcraft, or you're buying in-game items for Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Robin, what does PlayStation subscriptions look like?
We got PlayStation Plus.
Oh, how's that?
It's fine. It's fine.
So what is PlayStation Plus, though? What does it comprise of?
So in its previous guise, it was essentially one giving you access to online services related to games, and the other element was giving you access to 3 titles for free for a month.
Okay.
It has since evolved into a wider library, depending on which tier you opt for, and PlayStation has tried to make the free titles that are available a bit more alluring. I must, however, admit it has failed on both accounts.
Okay.
I have kind of mentioned in several podcasts in the past that Xbox has a real game changer on its hand with Game Pass. I think it is the service to beat, and it still boggles my mind as to why PlayStation has not simply copy and pasted. Because if it does that, it's game over.
Yeah.
So I must
concede
the point there that my learned colleague has a better service.
And I haven't even described it yet.
Yes. Right? Tell us about Xbox Game Pass, which we've already mentioned.
The Xbox Game Pass is Xbox or Microsoft, please sponsor us. It really is the industry-leading gaming subscription service, I would say. In terms of, I think, value for money, it's the Ultimate, which gets you all the games in the Xbox catalog. You can download them whenever you want and play them, as well as you get certain discounts on other games, and you get little free things here and there.
In other regions, you also earn rewards.
Yeah.
So you can get free skins for a game, or
I mean, it's 130 rand a month, right? Which is cheaper than PlayStation Plus. I think the standard version. And it offers so much more, which is crazy. It's mind-boggling why PlayStation doesn't drop the prices of. Yeah, and like PlayStation Plus, it allows you to play online, which is okay. So I've always had a problem with the fact that you need to have one of these subscriptions, either or, to play online when you can play online for free on PC whenever you want. Right? That's always been an issue for me. I guess that's just the way the cookie crumbles nowadays. But yeah, the Xbox Game Pass, it really is a value for money, a good service. It also has so PlayStation have desperately tried to match Game Pass over the years, and they have never. I think we asked why aren't they doing it? I think they just don't have the technology to do it.
So to just jump in here, I think that Xbox or Microsoft loses money on Game Pass.
I think they've admitted as much.
Because it's 130 Rand a month, and you get access to a massive library of games. And not just that, you also get access to a lot of titles on release day. So Forza Horizon, Forza Motorsport, Starfield even, Redfall even. Like, you don't have to buy these games, which to me just feels like a bad business decision. If I were John Microsoft, I would be very upset about the fact that this is losing us money hand over fist. However, I think that the amount of people that are coming to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass kind of offsets those losses. It's sort of the Amazon thing, right? Is you cut your nose for a month or two or a year or two, and eventually people are just going to offset your earnings through purchases of Game Pass.
I guess this is a time will tell situation. I mean, we just saw with the numbers of the consoles selling, PlayStation is still dominating.
Yeah.
So I guess the subscription service isn't as big of a deal as kind of we might think it is, because as you said, they're losing money. And is it really selling Xbox consoles?
Not to argue for Xbox here, but I think it is an important aspect when you consider newcomers to gaming.
Yeah.
Because if I'm looking at things without my PlayStation glasses on, I would tell someone that's new to gaming, what's the best value for money? Get an Xbox Series X, get Game Pass, and you sorted.
Series S, I would say.
Yeah.
The cheaper one. We'll get to this in a second. But yeah, I think that is the best way, because you don't have to go out and buy a game, and you don't know. Like, I think especially if you're new to gaming, you don't know what a good developer is. You don't know who a good publisher is. You don't know what a good game is. You know, I mean, that sounds a bit mean, but I don't think you do if you're just getting into the scene. So Game Pass gives you a way to try a whole bunch of different games from different genres, from different developers, and to find what you like, even if that's indie games. And then you can explore and buy the games if you want to, even though I don't know how many people end up buying games after they appear on Game Pass. I mean, I know a lot of people that are just, I'll wait for it to come onto Game Pass and then I'll play it, which is kind of sucky. But yeah, I mean, I think Game Pass, just from a gamer's perspective, really is just the better option here. Let's now just look at the physical consoles at the moment. So Xbox has 2 consoles. PlayStation currently only has 1, but there is plans to introduce a Slim. So Robin, I just want to ask you, do you think that the Slim console is going to be a cheaper console, as it were, more affordable than the baseline PS5?
Unless Slim is in the name, it will not be cheaper. Because remember, PlayStation, we don't do that here.
Okay.
We don't do...
It isn't a PlayStation Lite.
No, we don't do like the affordable stuff.
Okay.
We pay top dollar. And so I highly doubt it.
Okay, and Louis, there's 2 Xboxes, right? Xbox Series S and Series X.
So the Series S is cheaper.
Yeah.
And it has less kind of cutting-edge hardware. So the Series X and the PlayStation are kind of in the same hardware bracket, even though if you kind of look at it, the Series X has a little bit better hardware than the PlayStation 5. The Series S is worse than the PlayStation 5 in terms of hardware.
Yeah.
But it's much cheaper than both the Series X and the PlayStation 5. And it will let you play the latest games. Just you might not be able to get the highest quality graphics.
For how many years though? I mean, how many years is that Series S hardware gonna be able to handle AAA titles? We don't know.
That is the question, right?
I mean, you can say the same thing about the PlayStation 5. I mean, Robin was telling us.
I mean, how many loading screens were there in Marvel Spider-Man 2? Not many. I'm just gonna say it.
But then you're saying that the console, the PlayStation 5, Sony's top tier product, was smoking. You know, blowing fans crazy with Spider-Man 2.
I might have had fans in the room at the time. I can't speak to that.
So I think that's an industry-wide issue, you know.
Yeah, so that is something I do want to pick up because as we saw with the launch of Cyberpunk in 2020,
Yes.
2021?
21.
21, yeah. As we saw with Cyberpunk, like old gen consoles were kind of just left behind, and they just struggled to run the game. I don't even know if they can run the game at this stage after the game has been patched out the wazoo. But I think that both of these platforms are going to struggle once graphics technology kind of surpasses them. However, I say that, and I'm going to now refer back to Redfall and Starfield, where they both did not have 60 FPS at launch. And
13, right?
yeah, and for PC gamers, that was a real just slap in the face because, you know, as a PC gamer, you kind of expect to be able to customize the game and have 3000 hertz refresh rate if you really want to, at a 20K resolution if you wanted to. But because of the limitations of consoles and the fact that these developers wanted everybody to have a similar experience, it was limited to 30 FPS. Now, I don't want to get into the human arse eat more than 30 frames per second. I don't care for that debate anymore. It's been addressed. And I think that where these consoles are going to fall short is in 5 years' time when ray tracing is the next best thing, or not the next best thing, but the next best thing after ray tracing comes out. I think you're just going to have to upgrade your console. And I want to know, Robin, from you, is if you were to have to replace your PlayStation today, would you do it?
Right now, I wouldn't feel a need to. I'm quite happy with the performance. I did mention in my review of Marvel Spider-Man 2 that there was some fan noise. But I would have to have at least a dozen games of that ilk or that kind of processor-intensive requirements before I started really considering. I actually fired up my PS4 the other day.
Yeah.
My Lord.
Loud.
Yeah, big time. I thought like a foghorn was going off in there.
Ooh.
So I will admit that, yes, fan noise will probably be a consideration in 2 or 3 years' time, but it all depends on what AAA titles are asking of the PS5. And I think in that regard, we're still okay for now.
And you, Louis, how's the Xbox performing?
So it can be argued that the Series S is already out of date.
Yeah, we can concede that. But let's talk about the Series X.
The hardware is actually it's better than the PlayStation 5. There's more teraflops. I think there's like 8 more teraflops.
Yeah.
It's a lot of teraflops, people. So you can argue that, in fact, by the time the PlayStation 5 is coming out of date, the Series X will still be able to hang on a little bit more. I mean, but it'll be negligible. If you really go down to brass tacks, it'll be the same.
Yeah.
Both of the consoles will go out of date at the same time. If you really think about it, I mean, the way the games are, improving graphically, is by leaps and bounds every few years. Right?
Well, not only that, but whatever PlayStation does Microsoft will do, and vice versa.
Yeah. So I think that also it depends on what technologies come to the fore. Like we saw in the middle of the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 era, we had RTX coming out, real-time ray tracing, and I mean you could kind of fudge it with software. But I mean I think a good example of this is Guerrilla Games with Horizon Zero Dawn. Where the developers, Guerrilla Games, literally just developed or rendered what was in front of the player. And as you moved, it would just render the rest of the scene, which I thought was a really clever way to use the limitations of that console to create a game that was punching well above its weight. And I think that if you are clever in the way that you develop a game, in instances like that, the way you do things, if we look at like City Skylines 2, which is a PC exclusive, like that game was running incredibly poorly, with people saying that it was because of the teeth the game was rendering all the teeth of every player in the city or every person. Yeah. But I mean, like, if you are just smart about the way that you develop these games, you can kind of just squeeze as much performance as you want out of them. And who knows where we are in the next couple of years? Maybe 2D side-scrolling platformers become the new hotness, right? And then everybody's hardware is way too much. So we spoke a bit about acquisitions, and Robin, you mentioned that PlayStation has purchased Bungie. What other acquisitions has PlayStation made in recent times? Okay. But do you think that PlayStation needs to make acquisitions at all?
I don't think they need to make acquisitions. I think what they really need to do is look at PlayStation Plus. Yeah. I think they can quite happily allow Microsoft to snap up ailing studios if they want to. But if you have a comparable service to Game Pass, that becomes a moot point in my view. So, sure, they can look to perhaps snap up EA or Ubisoft or someone that wants to put themselves up for sale, but it doesn't address the immediate concern in my view, which is Game Pass and having PlayStation Plus be able to match that.
And Louis, you think that has Xbox's acquisitions been a good idea for them?
Oh, man. I think so. When we talked about the exclusive things coming up, the exclusives, the plan to have more exclusives, obviously with Activision Blizzard now.
Yeah. And all the sexual harassment lawsuits. Yeah. Great acquisition.
I mean, if we can leave that. I mean, we can leave that aside.
I mean, Bungie ain't so good either, if we're honest.
But yeah, I mean, it's in terms of what's more exciting, I think, for gamers coming up. Like what future possibilities there are. I think Xbox kind of corners that with, what could come out with Blizzard, what could happen with Bethesda, I think for PlayStation, you kind of know what's around the corner. It'll be another God of War.
Who doesn't love certainty? Who doesn't love
another Spider-Man?
That sounds amazing.
A third Horizon
game. Wolverine game. That sounds amazing.
So I think we'll take a bit of a break from the Xbox stuff and bring up something that I'm sure millions of people are shouting at us through the speakers right now. And that is Nintendo. So Nintendo is by far the biggest console on the market in terms of pure sales.
Yeah, the Switch, yep.
The Nintendo Switch, no matter how old it is, no matter how underpowered it is, no matter stick drift aside, it is one of the best-selling consoles of the modern era. And I just want to know, none of us here, I don't think any of us own a Switch, right?
Except for Clinton,
but he's not here. But would you guys ever consider purchasing a Switch?
There was a time a few years ago when it was very close for me.
Yeah.
Right? I was like thinking of getting one for like my wife, she could play, because it's the whole kind of idea of the Switch is that it's for more casual gamers, right? That's kind of the draw of the game of the Switch. And I was thinking, maybe I could get it, but then it's not cheap.
No, I mean it's cheaper than a PlayStation 5,
but it's
right?
Still not it's still
or
not
an Xbox Series X.
It's still not I'll just drop. I think it's
$7K.
Yeah, it's still it's still not that.
There's also the question of the games, because Nintendo Switch games never go down in price ever, not ever. Yeah. I mean, like now and then you'll get a special that's happening at like the Nintendo store in Sandton, where it's like 50 Rand off Zelda Breath of the Wild.
And Nintendo's still charging AAA costs for its games. I think Tears of the Kingdom, the latest Legend of Zelda, is 1,200 Rand, I think.
Which is ridiculous.
I mean, they're still as long as people buy the games, they're still gonna drop them. I think Nintendo has an iron fist around the nostalgia of gamers. Obviously, they were the first to bring out the consoles, and they were the first to back in the day, and they're gonna continue. They're gonna milk that until they did.
And Mario, of course.
Yeah.
Can't forget Mario. Okay, so this is a bit of a weird one, but I think that it's an important thing. Is who has the better controller?
So, for as long, and I mentioned this earlier, for as long as I remember, whenever this argument would come up, like around my friend groups or just randomly, I would usually be on the PlayStation side, because that's I grew up with PlayStation, and then the one thing that would always get to like my chagrin was like, yeah, but the controller's better for Xbox. Hands down, the controller's better. And I think that's something you can kind of see on the internet. Whenever there's a board where it's like, who has the better controller? Most people would say the Xbox controller is better.
So I think in terms of ergonomics, but it comes down to personal preference. Robin, who do you think is a better controller?
My colleague mentioned Legacy before. Don't forget the legacy of the DualShock, sir. Okay. As far as the DualSense is concerned, I have found we had a PS5 on loan for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been great. I haven't had issue with it.
Yeah.
I will, however, say that the Xbox Elite Wireless is a superior controller.
Okay,
anything
but that's
I've experienced.
Unfair because I mean I could say that like a PlayStation Nacon controller is the superior version of an Xbox controller, right? I mean I don't think let's just talk about base controllers here that ship with the console.
Yeah. Sure.
So I'm reviewing Modern Warfare 3 right now, which is the first Xbox game I played in a long time, and I haven't really had much experience with the PlayStation 5 controller, but the Xbox controller that comes with the box with I think we have a Series
X.
We have a Series X.
Yeah.
In the office. It just feels premium. It's heavy and comfortable, and everything's kind of where you kind of want it to be. The analog stick is right where it's on top of the D-pad. So PlayStation has the D-pad on top and the analog stick underneath. That's like their model for all the DualShocks.
Symmetrical versus asymmetrical.
Right? Meanwhile, Xbox has it other way around. So the analog is on the top and the D-pad is at the bottom, which I always found was very weird.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of like ruins your it's like cognitive dissonance. But it feels good to play. It feels more natural in the hand. The one problem always with the Xbox, now it's kind of been sorted out with wired. Now the controller is wired charging.
Yeah.
Previously, like the Xbox 360, the reason I didn't buy an Xbox 360 is because you had to buy batteries for the controllers.
Yeah.
Every week, you had to buy a pair of batteries. Maybe for gamers who don't play games. But when I was a kid, I was playing, maybe 18 hours of the day. I was gaming, right?
Yeah.
And PlayStation, you put the little plug-in in,
Charges.
Nowadays, that's kind of been fixed, right? With the wired charging. So that's not a problem anymore. Don't think about that.
And Robin?
Absolutely no issues with DualSense.
Okay.
This guy's talking about Xbox controller being better. Maybe something's wrong with your friend's hands. My hands are perfectly fine, normal human hands, and I've never had an issue.
So, from my perspective, I think that each controller has its benefits. I prefer using an Xbox controller for fighting games and sort of just games where I'm running around and exploring. But when it comes to racing games, I will always opt for a PlayStation controller. And I think that comes down to the fact that I grew up playing like Gran Turismo and Twisted Metal and all these racing games on a PlayStation. So my brain kind of just knows how to feather that throttle and like what to do with the D-pad and all that sort of stuff. So I think they each have their benefits. It really depends on you at the end of the day. That is something that does come down to personal preference.
Just another thing I wanted to add that I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
So the both controllers can also be used on PC.
Yeah.
But the Xbox controller is integrated already, set up. Right? You can just plug it in and it works with Microsoft for most games because of Windows. The PlayStation controller, you're gonna have to download a bunch of other third-party software and stuff.
PlayStation did try to fix that of late, especially with Steam. So Steam now has, if you don't know about this, welcome. But Steam has options where you can set up a controller profile, and when you plug in a controller, it will just attach that profile to the controller, right? So they have an official PlayStation DualShock 4. I don't know if they have the new controller though. But it does work really well, but sometimes it just doesn't work. So I recently reviewed Forza Motorsport, and that I played through Steam, and I only had my DualSense 4 controller, my DualShock 4 controller rather, and it would not pick it up. It would not pick it up as a PlayStation controller. It just picked it up as an Xbox controller, which is okay, but it gets confusing when it's like press triangle. Okay, well, which is triangle on or it's like press A, which is A. which is Square, right? I mean, it's just like it gets confusing. So I think PlayStation in that regard needs to do a bit more help or a bit more work in terms of the integration with Microsoft products. But
we need to integrate on a platform we don't own.
I mean, you porting your games to the platform. Like, come on. Okay, let's just see here. What else have we got? Okay, the thing that I want to just highlight is in terms of games. Now, objectively, there are, via Metacritic, there are more PlayStation games that are regarded as some of the best of all time. So if I can just read you the top 10 games on Xbox and PlayStation 5. So this is the latest Xbox Series XS and PlayStation 5. So at number 10, we have Tetris Effect Connected, which is cross-platform. There's multiple platforms. Resident Evil 4, the latest remake from 2023. Now this, Robin rightfully pointed out, was a PlayStation exclusive when it first released.
Yeah.
So
we walked so you guys could run.
Yeah. So I'm going to count this as a PlayStation, but it is now cross, obviously. Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe at 8. That is a PC game. Hades, which is cross, I believe, multi-platform. Alan Wake 2, which is also cross. Persona 5, also cross. Number 4, God of War Ragnarok, which, as we know, is a PlayStation exclusive at this point. But the top 3 games are Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, Baldur's Gate 3, and Elden Ring, all of which are multi-platform. So my question is do exclusives actually matter? Robin?
Yeah, I think yes. Especially because when you look at the quality of the exclusives on PlayStation side compared to the quality of exclusives on Xbox side, it's not even a contest.
Okay.
It's as simple as that, really.
Louis?
Unfortunately, I agree. Exclusives definitely matter. You can see it by the amount of people buying PlayStation games, PlayStation consoles compared to Xbox consoles.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to remember, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is PS5 exclusive.
Yeah.
Not coming on PS4 at all.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually.
And it is moving consoles. So
I mean, they need a console seller, so...
Yeah, and you can tell by the way that these executives go on about exclusives and console sellers that it is a big deal. And I think, like I said, Bethesda, Xbox bought these big companies because it wants more exclusives, because it wants to move consoles.
I mean, it's also if you own a studio and it's an exclusive to you make that money. It's yours to keep and own, to cherish and love and hold.
I mean, look at it's such a big deal now that Baldur's Gate 3 is only now getting an Xbox port.
Yeah.
Right? It at first had the PC port, then it went to PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5, right?
Yeah.
And that was a big deal that it got a PS5 port first, right? And only now it's coming with the Xbox port. That's obviously it excludes a portion of the gamers, right?
Yeah.
Obviously it's on PC, but if you only have an Xbox, you have to wait to play that game.
Yeah.
Right? And stuff like that matters, I think, in the consumer's minds. Like, what will come... If it does have a port, it will... Generally, they go to PlayStation first.
Yeah.
Right? Who knows why, but they do. Right?
yeah, maybe Redfall 2 will move console.
Let's hope so. So the final thing I want to just chat about is cloud gaming. So we're moving to a point where cloud gaming is becoming more accessible. Even here in South Africa, we have Rain bringing GeForce Now to South Africa. What does PlayStation offer in terms of cloud gaming, if anything, at this point, Robin?
Nothing much. They do have some services, but nothing that are up and running on the level of a GeForce Now.
Okay.
So nothing really.
And Rui?
So Xbox is kind of... I think their cloud gaming division is a bit more... fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
It's called Xbox...
xCloud. Yeah.
I almost said Xbox now. And you get... I think the Game Pass Ultimate gives you access to xCloud beta.
Yeah.
It's currently in beta. I know PlayStation...
And it's limited to certain regions. Yeah. It's not everywhere.
I think it's out in South Africa. If I'm
no, it's not available in South Africa.
So, and also the PlayStation one, I think recently just hit the market in October, and it's also limited to certain regions. But I think it's kind of in the same department. You can only play certain games on xCloud on certain devices.
Like Fortnite.
But yeah, I think in that sense they're kind of equal, lagging behind the likes of GeForce Now and the long dead Stadia.
Oh gosh, Stadia. Hey, yeah, that died this year as well. So I think to round off then, do we think collectively that these console wars are going to continue for much longer, or are we going to get to a point where we see cloud gaming becoming more viable? Just from my own experience, full disclosure, I've been using GeForce Now for quite a while now, nearly going on 2 months. And I can see how that service could replace my gaming PC, replace any consoles I would have, and literally just stream my games. The quality of the visuals, I mean, you can kind of argue that they're not as good as rendered 4K right on the machine in your living room. But for most people, it's going to be good enough. And I think that's just fine. Good enough is going to just help people experience games. And I wonder whether we're moving to a point where PlayStation and Xbox are both just operating platforms rather than trying to sell us consoles. What do you think of that? Am I completely out of my depth here, Robin?
If that were the case, PlayStation are in big trouble. Moving hardware is their business. And I think the recent Activision Blizzard deal, there was a sticking point around cloud gaming, especially in the EU. So do I think that cloud gaming is going to be the great equalizer? I don't think so at all. I think if anything, it will further cement the divisions. There will be squabbles, fights over licensing and things like that. It'll make things even messier in my cynical opinion.
Louis?
You can see now with because I covered the PlayStation when they launched their cloud thing in October. They were very careful. I think they're exploring cloud because they have to, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to stay up to date with the market. Even their kind of the platforms they allow their cloud gaming on is very limited. I think it's just PCs right now.
Who's that?
Sony.
Oh.
I think it's just PCs right now. You can't even get it on smart TVs by themselves or smartphones. It's like, yeah, it's either here or there. You play on the console, or you kind of maybe play at your summer home or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think maybe for Xbox it'll be different. Maybe they want to get more to platform bases where they just, you can get xCloud and that's it. And I don't think Xbox consoles are Microsoft's bread and butter. I think because Microsoft is such a insanely enormous company that maybe they'll focus on games. Maybe that's what they're going to do moving forward. Who knows? But I think to your earlier question of will the arguments, the console wars on social media kind of die down, I think they're going to get even worse. And I mean, I think now it's the worst it's ever been. Like, people are throwing insults at each other just because they prefer one console over the other.
Yeah, it gets bad. I saw the stuff happening during like Starfield's launch and during Spider-Man 2's launch. Like, people just get at each other's throats, and it's just a bit ridiculous when you think about it. You're fighting over who's playing what.
I think it's fun. It's fun to have your tribe. We talked about tribalism in another podcast.
I mean, if it just remains a little fun jabbing, sure.
People really take it seriously.
Yeah, if it's banter, that's all cool.
Yeah, but when it becomes like you are like dragging people's families into it, and come on.
I do want to raise just one point, and this is neither for PlayStation or Xbox, but I think that the push to cloud gaming could be bad for South Africa as a gaming kind of country. We've seen what digital sales of games has done to South Africa. We've seen a lot more manufacturers and publishers not really giving South Africa the attention it really deserves or needs. A lot of companies are starting to, I wouldn't say pull out, but certainly lessen their interest in South Africa purely for the fact that they're not able to ship or sell physical product anymore. And I feel like that's going to be the same thing that's going to happen if cloud gaming kind of takes off, because yes, South Africa is PlayStation country, but if Sony's not selling PlayStations in South Africa anymore, why should I care about that market when I can focus on the US or Europe, where people have a lot more money to spend a lot more on cloud gaming?
So I'll just counter that by saying that eventually the US and UK markets, there's no growth to be had there. Eventually you reach critical mass in the market and you're not going to grow anymore. We've seen this with the likes of Netflix, where Netflix pushed a lot of growth in the US and Canada, and in its most recent earnings call, there was no growth in those areas. Nothing. 0% growth. Like, they didn't lose subscribers either, but if you are hungry for growth, that's bad news for you.
Yeah, they've already hit critical mass.
Yeah, you've hit market saturation. And I think that once these companies realize that there's money to be made in their African hills, like, investment will eventually come here. But right now, I mean, we see it from behind the scenes, where there's just a little bit more. It's a little bit tougher to get physical things here in South Africa, Africa as a whole, because it is, I mean, hell, most video game publishers don't even announce what time a game is launching on the African continent. It's like the biggest continent, okay, not biggest, second biggest next to Asia, but the biggest continent in the world, and it's just ignored. So, I mean, it's 1 billion people that are on this continent, and we're just ignored. No. So I think anybody ignoring Africa because traditionally it hasn't been a big digital space or a big gaming space needs to just catch a wake up. Like, speaking to Tristan from Bravado Gaming last week, little plug for not last week, the week before, little plug for that podcast of the Discourse, sorry. Like, there is sort of awakening that's happening in Africa in terms of gaming, because we are getting to that point where internet infrastructure is becoming more robust. Data is becoming slightly more affordable, potentially not in South Africa, but around the world. Fixed line connectivity there's more options for connectivity. You don't just have to have a fiber line. You now have the likes of Starlink. You have other satellite internet providers, 5G, 4G. Like, all of these options are now becoming more widely available. And I think that to ignore Africa would be a really silly thing for a lot of publishers and developers. To sum up, though, I think that what we have learned in this Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Mass Debate, the show where we debate topics en masse. My name is Brendan Lotz. I will be hosting today, and joining me is Louis Monzon.
Hey, guys.
And Robin Lichetti.
Howdy.
Right, so this one is a very divisive topic. We're feeding right into the console wars here. Whether you're an Xbox fan or a PlayStation fan, we will have something to say about either one of those. But that's the topic of today's debate, is which is better, PlayStation or Xbox? Each has their benefits, but we're throwing that out of the window, right? And we're going to be arguing for our platform of choice. And I think that we need to start off by first saying that South Africa is PlayStation country.
Cool. Great debate. It's been lovely, guys.
So my first console was a PlayStation 1, the little grey guy. And the original Xbox wasn't actually released in South Africa, as far as I'm aware. But PlayStation was, PlayStation 2, and then eventually only the PlayStation, or the Xbox 360 came to South Africa at the same time that the PlayStation 3 came. But by then, Sony had kind of cemented itself as the console for South Africa. And over the years, Xbox has played second fiddle. And I think that that's true around the world, to be honest. Especially as we've moved into the modern era, where people are looking for reasons to buy a console. Now, modern day and age, consoles are very expensive.